Now we have 2 more sessions. So Claudia touched on storytelling for just a little bit. And I recommend following James. James' day job, let me qualify it, the whole ISBN side of things, correct, James?
That's right, yeah.
Intelligent spend side of things. But his real passion is storytelling. I love seeing James' posts. I recommend following him on LinkedIn. The drawings and things he does kind of illustrate the key points of what's happening in and around an event. So, and joining us from the UK as well. So,
thank you, Paul.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone. And I noticed all my other fellow presenters have started by giving their credentials and how long they've worked at SAP without revealing their actual age. So I'll do the same and also not reveal my age. So the first version of SAP that I used was R3 2.1D. My children were born when I was Basis pre-sales architect, and my daughter got married last year. My I number, which SAP people realize is a way of showing your longevity, starts 002209. Yeah, license to kill 00. Double O, that's right. But although my official role is part of Ariba pre-sales, now finance and spend, as Paul has said, my passion really is about how to communicate ideas such that people can remember them, understand them, and critically are able to retransmit them to others. And sometimes, we call this storytelling, and lots of people have used the word storytelling, but that's really the fundamental part is, can you explain complex ideas in ways that people can understand and they themselves retransmit? So, is this an important skill for enterprise architects? And we just heard from the panel about the importance of this and why it's important for technical people. So don't think that, storytelling, that's the kind of thing that Gen Z does or arts graduates. That's not for me. I've got a business degree. I've got a computer science degree. This isn't for me. That's not true. As enterprise architects, we need to be able to transmit information in different ways. And so let's sort of look at the reasons why we might need a story. So first of all, we already heard this idea that we need to explain to our families or what on earth we do all day. And I always use the expression of your brother-in-law at a barbecue. That guy, your sister married, you're not that thrilled about the guy. But you've got to explain at Thanksgiving what it is that you do. He doesn't really think you have a proper job anyway. So you need a succinct way to explain what you do. So that's one use case. It needs to be simple and relatable. But there are other use cases as well. And then we get into this first idea, which is that you need to tell stories differently for different audiences. They will listen differently and they'll consume the information differently. So another one might be presenting your project to win an award. At SAP, we're quite famous for having lots of awards that we can give out to people. And so some of you may have submitted things. By the way, I'm on the awards committee. We get like 90 of these things. And so believe me, if you send me like 12 deck PowerPoints and I have to look through 90, I'm not going to listen. I'm not going to read those. So I need something simple. So when presenting your business case, you need to have a way to wrap it up in something that makes sense. Another one is asking your manager for more budget, right? For more resources. Something simple that you can explain. There's another one similar to this, but I didn't put on the slide, which is how do you get a promotion? You need a story to tell your boss about why you should be promoted to the next level if you have formal levels in your company. So that's another important one. And lastly, we're here at head office, so, you may meet the CEO in the lobby. And they'll say, hey, you were at that SAP thing last week in Philadelphia. What was that like? You've literally got 15 seconds. Okay, so you need to have a story that they can understand, and they can understand what it is for them. Okay, so in this presentation, I'm not going to have a lot of theory, which, I've done a lot of research on this myself, but that's not really the idea. But I will have one idea of this. This actually goes back to Greek rhetoric and Aristotle. And there are 3 ways that people respond to information. So I call this the art of persuasion, because really, when we're talking about storytelling, this is not the moth. The moth, right? Where you come up there and people tell gags and stuff. That's great. This is not that. We're trying to persuade people of an idea. We're trying to persuade them to change their way of thinking. And so there are really 3 ways that we do that. So the first is, I call logos, I'm taking Aristotle's credit here. So Aristotle calls this logos, which is using a logical way of thinking. And let's face it, We tech guys, I have a master's degree. We're good at this, okay? We are good at logical thinkers, right? We'll give you an ROI study, we'll give you an Excel spreadsheet, we'll give you a revenue plan, all these things, right? We're good at logical presentations. One other thing here, AI is also good at this. Right? So we need to be more than just present information logically. So there are two other ways that we consume information. And logic, by the way, is on the brain. So this is easy to remember, not because of these pompous Greek words, although it does impress people by using pompous Greek words, but this is thinking about with the brain. Okay? The logos is in the brain, so that's how you receive information. The second one is in the heart. Okay? This is bringing emotions to your idea. And generally, in the West, we're not comfortable with this. We have this idea that there should be a split between the professional nature of work and your home life. Okay? You don't bring your home life to work. You don't talk about your passions, your philosophy, your religion, your belief, your spirituality, your family even. That's not appropriate. And I think that's wrong. I think that to be a communicator, you need to be able to show that you are a real person. And you're trying to get the other people to respond in their heart. Okay, and Varose talked about this as well. So we need to be able to make sure that we are bringing information that resonates with people in the heart. So this is where you talk about your family, talk about your beliefs. Okay, that's a way that people will remember what you're talking about and understand it. And the last one is called pathos. This is in the gut. Okay, so we have head, heart, and gut. Or I call this butterflies in the stomachs is another example. Okay, this is a big idea. So although we may be making a fairly small argument, like we need to rechange the schedule of this from something else, it's a small argument. It needs to be wrapped in a big idea. People like to think that what we do is important. They like to know that there is a big reason for what we're doing. So if you're asking someone to change, then you need to give them a big idea, a reason to do so, not because the spreadsheet says that we'll make more money. That's not very exciting. Okay, so there are three ways that we make an argument. And my belief is that you need to score on at least two of these. If you're going to do a presentation or you're going to make an argument, you can't just stick with one. You can't just be a big ideas guy, and it's like, that doesn't really work. You need to have something else to say. You can't just be a detailed person. You need to be able to reach the heart as well. So again, if you don't remember too much from this presentation, just think of these three things. I need to make sure that my arguments resonate in the heart, so the heart, the head, and the gut. Now, the good news about this, I mean, we've talked about new skills that people need to learn as enterprise architects is, this is not a new skill. So storytelling, we all do it. All humans have done this. All cultures have done this. If you look at ancient cultures, sometimes the only information we have about them is their myths and stories. We don't know no language, nothing. Okay? And so we know that the earliest humans would gather around a fire and they would talk. Okay? They would talk stories. That's how culture develops. And so the good news is we do this already. We do it in the pub. We do it with our friends. We do it around the dinner table. We do it at church. We do it at political rallies. We hear stories all the time. But we've been told, again, this is a bit of a Western culture thing, that that's not appropriate at work. Okay? But I think that's wrong. So we want to bring that culture into our work life. Now, like a lot of you, I do a fair amount of business travel. And when my kids were young, back in those basis pre-sales days, my gosh, I remember those dial-up modems with SAP and looking for an analog line. Yeah, they were babies. And I would have to travel and come back. And sometimes I would be late back. And I would miss dinner time. I miss bath time. But if you got there just in time, you could do story time. And a story time between a parent and a child is a special time. It's where you communicate deep ideas. You read a book maybe, but you add to it. You do funny voices. You make them laugh. Okay, it's a very key part. And so everyone knows that story time is important. But you know what? No kid ever said to their dad, "Hey, Dad, tell me some facts." Okay, like no one does that, right? So people crave stories. And stories are used to communicate what I call deep thoughts, okay, deep ideas. So one of the very earliest stories, and this goes back to Aesop, another ancient Greek, sorry, I like those guys, is the idea of the story of the boy who cried wolf. I've seen a few nods already, right? There's a little shepherd boy, he was out looking after the sheep, and he used to go say, "Hey, there's a wolf coming, there's a wolf coming." And all the villagers would run up to the hill, and they'd say, "Oh, there's no wolf." Except one day, what happened? There was a wolf. And what happened to the boy? Nobody came. And then he got eaten, right? Or PC version, the sheep got eaten. But anyway, we all know this story, all right? We probably told it to our kids. We may have heard it from our parents or grandparents. And the story is 2,500 years old. And I did some research recently about how this story appears in other cultures. It appears in Arabic culture, and it appears in Korean culture, and it appears in Indian culture. So the same story. The reason it's such a great story is it has to pass on the deep truth about honesty, about not lying. And that's why this story resonates. It's why we tell it. Not because it's funny or suspenseful or has great characters. No, we tell it because we want to tell our children this deep truth that it's important that you don't lie. Now, we could say, here are the top 10 reasons why you don't lie. Okay, I'll give you a little list. All right? Or I could emote at them and say, don't lie, don't lie, don't lie. We don't do that. We wrap it up in a story. So deep truths are transmitted by stories. So, I work at SAP, right? So we have a lot of PowerPoints. And PowerPoints don't convey emotion. Right? Nobody gets emotionally involved in a PowerPoint slide. So I don't want to do down PowerPoint too much because you know what? Hey, I've got a deck right now. But just be careful about thinking that PowerPoint is a way that you can communicate on those other levels. It doesn't communicate passion. It doesn't communicate heart very well. It's great for facts. So don't overdo use of PowerPoint. I'm talking mainly to my SAP colleagues here. So no one's going to get emotionally involved in a PowerPoint slide. So obviously, I've talked about how important it is that we bring these other parts of our psyche to work, so the logos, the ethos, and the pathos. Because, in an age of AI, right, everything can look the same, all right? So by being emotional, by showing you're a real human, you're showing you're a human, right? Because, if you sound like a robot, you might as well be a robot. And there's lots of robots out there, right? So if you write your blog in a fairly mechanistic way, it sounds like AI. It could be AI. Most blogs on LinkedIn, I think, are AI anyway, right? So it's even more important. That's why I put this in an age of AI. It's even more important that we sound human to prove that we actually are. So again, 5 years ago, I've been doing this storytelling class for many years. I've never had to make this observation before. But now I have to say, it proves you're actually human. And one side thing here, this slide shows it's my slide, right? This didn't come via Waldorf, all right? So there's something about your own slides, make them your own. Okay, if it's a personal message, as this is, don't rely on somebody else's. Make it your own. Okay, so last thing, that's why I do handwritten slides, hand-drawn slides. So I want to go back to that comment, right, which I made. This is actually a comment from my minister at church. The story is the only transmitter of deep truths. Okay, this is a great tag, and I have this on my WhatsApp profile. The story is the only transmitter. Oh, my Twitter profile, by the way, says likes hats, hates PowerPoint. That's my Twitter profile. The story is the only true transmitter of deep truths. If you want to persuade your children not to lie, you wrap it in a story. I'm going to have some other examples of this as well. So, there's this. So in order to show examples of this, I'll say there are two deep truths I need to transmit in my job at SAP. And as I said, I originally came from Ariba, so basically around this. So the first thing is true for any SAP business process, right? Whichever part of SAP you're in is SAP is about the end-to-end business process. It's about a broad process from A to Z. Okay, it isn't just small things. Okay, it's the end, whether it's quote to cash, recruit to retire, source to pay. It's all about an end-to-end process. And I was at SAP in the early days of R3 when we showed people this. It was like, wow, that's amazing, right? You can actually create a sales order and then see it in production and then see it in shipping and then see it in billing. Fantastic. I'd agree. And some people say that is really SAP's key benefit in our applications. Great. So that's the deep truth. And now I'm going to talk about different ways that we can explain this deep truth that SAP is about end-to-end applications. Okay, so the first one, this is a story from when I was a kid. And so I'm from England, as you might know. And in England, we have tea, famously. I'm sorry about the Boston thing a few hundred years ago, but we famously have tea in England. And when you have tea in England, they used to come with a tea card. I think in America you had cigarette cards, but we don't have cigarettes in England, we have tea. And so you used to collect these. And, in the 70s, there wasn't a lot going on. So, whoa, collecting tea cards, man, this is so great. So we used to collect them. And here's my collection here, and this was the race into space. I think 1970 something or other. And so anyway, so I clocked these cards, and there's my little book. I asked my mother for it, because mothers never throw anything away. Oh, I've got it, don't worry, I've got it. Okay, so got it. And so here's one of the pages on the book here. So let's take a look at this. This is the Europa rocket, number 41 in the collection. I got all 50, by the way, because I was very good at this. I used to trade them. So let's read about this Europa rocket. Okay, so in the bid to gain independence, the object was to place a rocket and satellite. Okay, so let's read about how it's put together. By the way, who's ever heard of this? But now, this is the same time with Saturn V and the Apollo, the Europa rocket. Okay, so Britain contributed the Blue Streak, an abandoned ballistic missile. That's a bad start. France and West Germany built the second and third stages. Italy provided test satellites, and Holland and Belgium, that well-known spacefaring nation, Belgium, provided the telemetry and tracking, and it was all launched in Australia. So how well do you think the Europa rocket did? Did you hear about it going to the moon? Because that was the objective. No. Blew up every single time. Blew up every single time. Okay? Because the bits didn't work together. Okay? It's not rocket science. Right? If the things don't plug together, they're not tested, they're not integrated, it all goes wrong. Remember the deep truth we're trying to explain here. SAP is about end-to-end business processes. So this is a metaphor for that. Okay, so, I see. If things aren't put together properly, they're not tested, they're not integrated, they all come from different providers. When you light the blue touch paper, boom, it all goes wrong. And so that's an example of a metaphor, which I put together when I read this as an article in the Times a few years ago. And so it has a structure. And now you see the James Marland structure for putting together an analogy or a metaphor. So first is you need to get the attention of people in the room, or fellow friends on the web, on the remote. How to get people's attention? So one great way, which I can't do with this gadget, by the way, is to blank the screen. Okay, simple way. You press B on a keyboard, and the screen goes blank. But if you're sharing, turn off the sharing. Then your face fills the room. Whoa, okay. Now, remember, people's faces are more interesting than most PowerPoints. Okay. But in most remote calls, the PowerPoint is 99% of the screen real estate, and your face is the size of a postage stamp. That's the wrong way around. So at least turn it off now and again. Have your face fill the screen. I read recently that newborn babies can recognize their mother's face after, like 9 days or something? I think PowerPoint takes a bit longer to understand. So we're naturally tuned into human faces. So use that to your advantage. So I call this the cue. So set up the thing. Unfortunately, when I was packing, I forgot to take the books. I'm supposed to have the book with me and wave it to you, or ask someone on the front row to read it. But I'm not as organized as Stefan with his ropes. So I forgot to bring my book. But anyway, so have physical props is a good way to change the thing. Often I'm in presentations where, quite frankly, and this wasn't the case today because the previous panel was great. But sometimes people are a bit dead when you walk up on stage. So you have to change the atmosphere sometimes. So second one is you do have to give context. So you don't know this story, I don't think, unless you really are space buffs. So you have to give a little bit of information, and that's okay. People like to learn new things, but keep this short. So when you practice this is where you trim it down. Because generally, my rule is you've got 90 seconds from starting to when people start saying, where's this going? This is kind of weird. So don't make it longer than 90 seconds. So and it's probably lower if you're doing this remotely. So that's the background. This is where you practice chopping bits out. And then the personal touch is the best part. So it's my belief that any analogy that you give, any metaphor, is much stronger if there's a personal connection. This is my book, my story. I stuck these cards in myself when I was a boy. And you can't copy this in the same way. But don't worry, you have your own stories. I'll show you how to do that. But this is the important part. And we'll go to some of the stories that we've heard this week, and I'll point out the ones that were personal and why that is so effective. And so when you hear someone else's story, find a way to make a personal connection to it. So we heard the Dick Fosbury story earlier on today, right? Dick Fosbury was the guy in the high jump, and this was from, let me check my notes here. This is the one that Ranjit told this one. Okay, great story. But Ranjit doesn't have a personal connection. But you know what? I went to the Paris Olympics this year, and I went to the high jump final. So I saw the high jump. Now I know this story. I can get my ticket. I still got it. And wave around and say, you know what? I was at the high jump. And you know what? They all do the false pre-flop because I was there and I saw it. So I now have a lead-in to make that story more personal, which I think is a way to make them more exciting. So always try to find ways to make your story personal. OK, so that's the second one there. And the pivot. This is the aha moment where you think, oh, he's not talking about rockets, is he? He's talking about end-to-end business processes. Oh. And when you're on the stage, this is kind of fun, right? Because you can see little people's eyes lighting up when they get this, right? Little smiles on their faces. And then a well-designed analogy, a well-designed story has to have, I call, three, I use a again, pompous word to make it sound there's more in it than there is, 3 points of congruence. Okay, so 3 ways in which the metaphor is true and the deep truth about end-to-end business process is true. And so here, the rocket stage is 3 processes, integration and testing. It's always best to buy from one provider. So I change this a lot if I'm dealing a lot with partners. So anyway, so it's always best to buy. We love our partners. And thanks for dinner. And then I call this the epigram. Is there a way to sum it up in a simple way? And yeah, it's not rocket science. It's a cute little line. Okay, so again, if you're short on these, ChatGPT is quite good at coming up with these. It's not great at the things, but it can be useful. It's like a little headline or something that you can say, oh, it's not rocket science. And that cues up the story in your mind. OK, so that's the flow. All right, so it's a couple more of these. Remember the deep truth? Same deep truth. SAP is all about end-to-end business process. So this is just a picture, right? So this is a picture of a wall close to my house in England, right? And it's like, OK, well, it's a picture of a wall. But if you look carefully at the wall, right, it's broken, right? But look even more carefully, which part of the wall is broken? Where has the wall failed? No, it's not the foundation. Not the foundation. The foundation's fine. The mortar, correct. The mortar has failed. The bricks are fine. The bricks haven't cracked, but the mortar has failed. And that's true in business processes too. Where do they fail? At the interchange between two processes. Okay, so if you're trying to assemble something, focus on the mortar. That's the weak point, not the bricks. The bricks will be fine. So when you assemble your business process, focus on the mortar between them. That's likely where they will fail. Simple example. Now, unfortunately, I saw this, and I thought, I've got to take a picture of this. This is great. And I wanted to have pictures of the bricklayers fixing it. But by the time I went out there again, it had been already fixed. Never, shame. OK, so that's another example of a metaphor. Same deep truth. And here's the last one. No words needed, OK? So this is like a meme, and Alexander, previously, he's the king of the memes, OK? So this is an example, right? So, by the way, I spent ages trying to figure out who built this, and why did they do it, and why is it in front of it's in London, right? It's like a real picture. Anyway, so this simple is, sometimes a picture is enough, OK? So same deep truth. SAP is all about end-to-end business process. OK, a little interaction now. So which one do you like best? OK, so everyone's going to have one vote in the room, so get ready with your hand. Online, you type into the chat, and then we'll read it. So who liked the space one? OK. Who liked the mortar and the bricks? OK, so that. Who likes the limousine? You know what? From this area, it's about a third, which I was going to say anyway, even if it wasn't. But actually, it was. Which shows that different stories resonate with different people. OK? So, and also, they take different amounts of time. They're communicated in different ways. Okay. So that's the idea of understanding your stories. OK. But as I said, we're here in day 3 or day 4, how you count it, of this conference. I wanted to look at some of the stories that we've already had. So here we are. So the first one, let me see. So this is Stefan. OK, so we like this one, right? Who remembers this story? Yes, we like this one. OK, if I were to stop and ask you how does this work, you would probably be able to remember it. OK, the red and the blue, one's standard and one's custom. I think it's the guy nodding right here. They all twisted together, except when you have a SAP system with BTP, you have these little clips, and you use the APIs only. Very, very nicely done. So the round of applause, Stephanie's still here. And unlike me, he didn't forget to pack his ropes when he went to Philadelphia, where I forgot to pack my tea cards. Okay. Second one we have here, this is Garash, and we've already had this one. Timo reminded us of this. I've got the original here. Here it is. Okay, it's the crunched up data model, right? Timo and I both like this because we both noted it down. Okay, remember what it is? Here's your nice data model. You crunch it up, you throw it into a data lake, and no one knows what it's doing anymore. Okay? Easy to do. Okay, we can all do this. You can copy this one very easily. Okay, it's very, very simple. You can tell it resonated because we both made note of that one. Then from the first day, this is Anya. Now, I liked about this one, and the more I thought about it, the more I liked it. And she said, she's not here anymore, we're not just building a house here, we're building a city block, we're building a skyscraper. And when you build a skyscraper, you have to have governance. When you build a city block, you have to have zoning, you have to have ordinance, you have to know who's in charge of the utilities and the security. This is not a little tiny house we're building. Like, oh, I see. So that's why her comments around BDC and so on were important, because she tried to address these other issues. So again, this idea of we're not building a house, we're building a skyscraper. And of course, I got some image generator to give me a picture of that, because that's the kind of thing that you can do. From our very first day, and this one didn't resonate with me because I have no idea about American football, but apparently this was a thing in Philadelphia. Actually, cricket fans? Afghanistan, what's that about? I mean, see, all the Americans are going, what the heck? Afghanistan, please. Someone else can tell you this, very painful. Anyway, so but apparently, I had to make some notes of this, but the Philadelphia Eagles were better prepared and therefore had better performance. Okay, simple, okay. Then we had Jason. So Jason had a story about his family, about how it was so hard for him to explain to his kids what he did. Okay, and he went a lot, he talked about his kids and his wife, his dog and his cat, and the son wearing the headphones, and that resonated, right? And the reason these stories resonate, this one particularly, is when you make them personal. So Jason, remember, he's talking about, is he still here, Jason? Jason was talking about his family. But you know, when he's talking about his family and the fact they don't care about him, what are we thinking about? We're thinking about our own family and how we would do it. So you transfer what he's talking about to what we're talking about. I have time. I have time. Okay. So that's the example from today. We talked about that one already. Possibly flop. Okay. So another example of a deep truth that we have to do is this is SAP Business Network. Okay. And so my comment, which I made many years ago, was having an ERP system without a business network is like a phone with no SIM card. Okay. Your ERP doesn't talk to anything. Okay. You're building in isolation. So that's why a business network is so important. Side issue, if you're doing an S4 implementation, you have to think about the business network as how you connect to everybody else. It's a key message. So how did this story get propagated? So on a slide, yes, because we're SAP, so of course it appears on the slide. At the bottom of this slide, it says, like a phone with no SIM card, a network is now we're talking. It appears in one of my whiteboards where I draw on a screen, and there's an example of a missing SIM card. It appears in a blog post by a colleague of mine. He wrote a blog about this. It appears also in this French video. I'm not going to play it because, you know, the French are so romantic. And so they have a whole thing about the boy asked the girl for his number, and she says, I'm sorry, I'm not connected to the internet. And then at the bottom it says, that's like having an S4 system not connected to the business network. And so I was like, oh my gosh. I wish I could, but I don't have a SIM card. I'm not connected, so okay. And then finally, this is Austria, a T-shirt, right? So it had T-shirts printed. Running S4HANA without the business network is like a phone without SIM card. So again, same idea, it can be propagated differently. So other ways that I make this network message. Here's a slightly more highbrow one, which is in the Middle Ages, this is an old woodcut, very famous. The medieval mind was, there was a flat earth, and that was all there was. And then with the Age of Enlightenment, you could peek through the firmament and see the universe beyond, okay, with Galileo and also the conquistadors discovering the new lands and so on. So this idea that we move from a flat earth to the Age of Enlightenment, that's like an ERP, where you move from inside the four walls to looking at everybody beyond. Okay? I rushed through that too much because I haven't too much time today, but longer as a blog posting. Sounds very, very erudite. And the last one, here's a personal story. This is from my own church from a few years ago. We used to run the sound system like on the left. That's how it used to look. There were 32 separate connectors. The guys in the AV, I think, I remember those days. And they're all plugged into this massive thing called the snake, which would wiggle between down the middle of the church. Everyone would pick over it, and it would break down. And that's how we did the sound system. Right? And now we have this. Okay. My contention is this is how many companies communicate electronically with their suppliers and customers. Right? They have point-to-point connections via EDI, via PDF, via email, and so on. And it doesn't scale. It goes wrong all the time. What you need to have is a proper network. Okay. So, simple example of a real story, making the same deep truth that you need to connect to a network. Okay, voting. Who liked the SIM card one? Okay. Who likes the seeing through the firmament? Oh, erudite. Don't like that. Who likes the SIM? Oops, go back. Who likes the point-to-point? Is that stretch, Timo? Will you give me the thumbs up? Oh, who likes that one? Likes that one. All right. So again, different stories resonate with different people. Okay, a little bit more on where to find stories. Oh, first of all, I never use SAP corporate graphics. Oh, it's so boring. And the people on them are so perfect and so much younger, more beautiful, and better dressed than anybody I know at SAP. So here's a picture I took recently when I was in Greece. So where do you get stories from? So these will be pretty fast. So take pictures. That's where the broken wall thing came from. That's where the music cable thing came from. Get lucky. This was a day before an event. I happened to go to a museum, and it happened to be just great, and it worked out beautifully. I was talking about risk, and this is the Tower Bridge, and I talked about lubricants, valves, and gauges. Sometimes you can be lucky. Become the story guy. Then people send you stuff. So a colleague of mine sent me this mail shoot from somewhere in Pittsburgh and said, hey, there's a story around this somewhere. So be the story guy. Write everything down. Oh, I'm Mr. Moleskine. I love my Moleskines, right? There's one right there. I write the back page of them. It's all full of my potential stories. Things I've heard, things I've read. Don't worry, there's 12 of these in total. Use the building you're in to get inspiration. In Europe, this is easy. In America, this is hard. Nothing inspiring about this auditorium. Artifacts. This is an old invoice I found in my house. I have an old house. I mean, you would call it old because it's just 110 years old, but we think that's like, new in English. And this is an old invoice I found, and it tells a story about how invoicing hasn't actually changed in 100 years. Dates. Okay, it's Valentine's Day, it's a leap day, famous births, famous deaths. This is good for blogs. News stories. So when the James Webb Telescope came out, I had a blog written about how it not only allowed you to see further back in space, but further back in time, just like a connected planning system. Oh, yeah, good one. Use the country you're in. Okay, so I was in Mainz in Germany last week. So I had a whole thing about Gutenberg, because I'd been to his museum specifically the day before, so I could say, yesterday I went to the Museum of Gutenberg. Oh, that's good. And it's like, Newtown Square? Yeah, not so much. I sing in a choir, so sometimes there are stories from that. Sometimes there are little anecdotes. I work in a bookshop, and so when this girl bought a copy of Aesop's Fable, I've used that picture to introduce Aesop, and yes, I got a permission to take a picture. Oh, and of course, remember the title is In an Age of AI. So let's try it out, okay? So just because AI is not, it has a role to play in finding stories. I used to start the presentation here, and people say, oh, it's a lot of work, James. Yeah, it's bloody hard being a storyteller. And now you can't say that, because actually ChatGPT can give you ideas for how to write stories. So let's try that out. So I recorded these yesterday. Okay, so here's the first use case. Keep the core clean is an expression that we use at SAP to tell our customers they should adopt Sand and stuff like that. Are there better metaphors that could be used? Because keep the core clean, it's a metaphor itself. It's not that great. It's like silos. Yeah, we all say silos. That's not great. Oh, Timo and I are talking about data is the new oil. Is the worst metaphor ever. Right, do you agree with that? Yeah. Because oil is dirty, it's hard to find, it's scarce, it's expensive. Data is not that at all. So anyone who says data is the new oil is just lazily copying a metaphor. So don't do that. All right, so now we're going to here. So I use Claude, but for no real reason. I've tried different ones, and I paid $40 a month for Perplexity and different things. But I think Claude's pretty good for writing. This is literally yesterday. So I could press the button there, John. We're going to paste that directly in, which I did yesterday. Keep the core clean. Okay, so what's he going to climb? Here we go. Here are some alternative metaphors. Stay on the main road, follow the blueprints, maintain factory settings. That's quite good. The unaltered bridge, the tailor's warning. Oh my God, the symphony score, the garden path. Don't paint the... Okay, so I asked it to group into conventional storytelling and way out there. Okay, and I've left the scroll here on the way out there one. But actually, what's this? Don't put a saddle on a shark. Okay, that's that good. Yeah. Avoid software tattoos. Oh, okay. I mean, you know what? There's probably an idea of truth in this, right? A previous one said, don't put a window on it. Don't bedazzle the spaceship. Yeah, astronauts don't add directive gems to their spacecraft. Like, okay, right, okay. So, kind of fun, right? So this is a great idea. It obviously needs more work, but this idea, if you're short on ideas, I use ChatGPT as a generative crutch, okay? I haven't got any ideas right now. Give me some ideas. And now we're all laughing. Oh, okay, I can see, gets the ideas going. It's also group things together into simple, conventional, and like totally nuts. It's always a bit more fun. It's like when I do my presentation summaries. I use standard, but then do it in the style of Shakespeare and in the style of two rappers talking, because that is a great way to summarize any Teams meeting, by the way. So, okay, so next example. So again, we're going to show how we use ChatGPT for our creative crutch. So the second one here. So we've got this idea of, I want to do some analogies, but I haven't got any ideas right now. I need 5 analogies to explain why good, well-structured data is the key to using AI effectively. Good message, right? Yeah, absolutely. SAP Unleashed, fantastic. This is the kind of thing we're saying. Okay, yeah. Okay. So did I think that the storytelling of that presentation was good? Yeah, okay. But could be better. So I want 5 analogies, new ones. Okay, so here we go. So how can caught up mistakes? Press the... Again, I recorded this just yesterday. I haven't really spent a lot of time looking at them, to be frank. So let's have a look what we got here. Okay. Recipe book. Okay. Orchestra. I've heard that before. Boring. Foundation of building. Yeah, pretty boring too. What else have we got? Oh, a map. That's quite good. Language translation knowledge. Oh, I've not heard of it. So I've done this many, many times. So the same kind of things come up over again. It's like an orchestra. In fact, we even have the word data orchestration, which is itself some kind of hokey metaphor for an orchestra. And so foundation, again, everyone says about that. Data foundation, boring. But this last one's interesting, right? Language translation analogy. Okay. Using AI with poorly structured data is like trying to translate between languages using a dictionary where half the words are missing. Misspelled or defined incorrectly, or even worse. No matter how sophisticated your translation algorithm is, your output will be filled with errors and misidentification. Not bad, right? Not bad. Okay. If you're a language buff, which I'm not particularly, but then you might say, "Oh, that's interesting. When I was at university studying Spanish, this actually happened when." Like, oh, yeah. That's not a true statement, by the way. I'm just saying how this can make you think of ways to make these things personal. Remember, one of my things in my 5 list of checklist is it needs to be personal. So the last thing I do is I ask Claude, can you work on that last one? Because I like that. The other ones were like, yeah, a bit boring. So that's next one then. Build out number 5, the language translation. And now I sort of put some of the structure around it. It needs to have a snappy title and 3 points of congruence, because that's what James says, which will then be the paragraphs. This is for a LinkedIn blog, because that's what, everyone's doing this, right? Give a call to action to learn more about SAP Data Cloud. Okay, good, okay. Basically, I said, I can't be bothered to look up the URL where it is, so you figure it out. Okay. Okay. Next one, please. Build out number 5. Okay, that's just, there it is. Okay. So Claude actually does the whole formatting thing over here. Oh, right, okay. This is there's your first bullet point, second bullet point, third bullet point, and then the URL at the bottom. So I did this literally yesterday. I haven't proofread it, all right? But it's not bad, okay? So it's got a snappy title, which is actually quite good here. Context is everything. That's certainly true in translation, and it's certainly true in business, right? That's why we have Guresh, the knowledge graph thing, right? So you have the right context, and it's making that point here. And then hopefully that URL takes me somewhere to SAP. So actually, it said at the bottom here, would you like to publish it? It's like, whoa, hang on. So I didn't press that because I'm not quite sure if it's actually going to put it on LinkedIn under my name. I haven't looked at it yet, but believe me, everyone else is doing this. So just last comment, let's think about how we use ChatGPT here. So use it as a creative crutch. I don't have any ideas. Give me some ideas. That was the first 15. And then, okay, let's focus on that one. And then finally, write me an article with has the points of context. Now, this might not end up being a LinkedIn. You might use it as part of a talk. But I think it's a nice idea next time you have to explain elements of BDC that you might want to use as language translation analogy for some of the areas at the bottom. Okay, so a few final thoughts here. Always use your own handwriting. Everyone knows it's yours. So first, different stories resonate with different audiences. We proved that with which ones did you like best. And that really was a three-way split. And then for you PowerPoint people, one deck is not enough. So if you say, oh, I just use the L1 deck, that's standard. Dude, it was not written for this event. It was written for something else. So don't copy other people's decks. You need to work on your own. Second one here. So ROI business case is good. That's the logos piece, but it's not sufficient. Okay, you need to make sure that you are scoring in the other areas, ethos and pathos, the heart and the gut, emotions and some big idea. Be human, be authentic, be memorable. Because the idea is your story needs to be transmitted in a meeting that you're not in. This is why it's so important. Now, I actually work in customer success, so I train salespeople at SAP. And I say it's not like, well, last time I was in India, I went on a tour. We have to go to the carpet guy. Oh, no. That's a full-on 20-minute sales pitch on buying a carpet. Oh, Jesus. And, the guy's really good because some people do buy carpets. They go to the session and they buy a carpet. And selling B2B software isn't like that. The person on the other side of the screen or in the room, they're not empowered to buy it right now. So what you have to do is to tell them a story that they can retransmit into the meetings that they're in, which may be 3 or 6 months away. A meeting that you're not invited to. Your story may make it in there. Your PowerPoint certainly won't. So that's why wrapping up your deep truth in a story is important, because it gets transmitted in meetings that you're not in. So that's about the importance of retransmission. Last thing, when you're doing a presentation, I always put a timer halfway through that says, halfway through, I'll assume that people I'm speaking to have got it. The second half of the presentation, I'm going to work on giving them something to tell outside this meeting. Okay, how will they retransmit my idea to a meeting I'm not in? And then lastly, use ChatGPT for a creative boost. All right? We're all getting lazy these days, so that's fine. Design the story for retelling. Okay, so stories are best when they are designed for retelling, not just for getting gags in the room, not just for getting someone to say, oh, I like that. But the real test of it is, can it be retold? Okay, 12:15.
Thank you. And James, thank you once again for taking the time to fly in from the UK for this. James was one of the presenters at our Academy event you saw in the video earlier on.